Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you, wherever you may be. I am Richard Bann, and we are happy to be looking at Their Purple Moment, the film that marks the first collaboration of Laurel and Hardy with their longtime director, the younger brother of Charlie Chase, Jimmy Parrott. Edgar Kennedy had been directing The Boys, and he does play a cop in scenes shot for but deleted from the picture's wind-up scenes. Fred Gill was originally slated to helm this one, and we'll see his sister later as the waitress who presents Stan with a bill for treating the midgets. Big cast list given in the credits. We seldom, if ever, see that many names posted for a two-reeler. And here is formidable Fay Holderness as Stan Laurel's miserly wife, Mrs. Pincher, as in Penny Pincher. Laurel and Hardy weren't yet a brand, so the studio was still using gag names for them. Later, she'd play Mrs. Hardy, who wants to get Japan on her radio in Hog Wild, and who doesn't? She was 9 and 11 years older than Stan and Ollie. This is a great gag where Stan has to knock on his own front door for his wife to let him in the house. Have to love that. Their Purple Moment was shot in late February of 1928, right after You're Darn Tootin' and right before Should Married Men Go Home, both of which are better. It's a lesser entry from their prime period of silent film classics, though still plenty good. We know Robert Youngson thought so too because he waited until going through all of their other top silent shorts. Took him 14 years to excerpt this short in his compilations before having to resort to using this last remaining untouched good one for his final anthology film, Four Clowns, in 1970. Now, Stan gives his wife a phonograph record featuring evidently Japanese songs. 2 years later, when they made Hog Wild, were they thinking about this? Where the same Fay Holderness wants to get Japan on her radio? Coincidence? We have to wonder. This ingenious hiding place for the money Stan is withholding from his wife is a portrait of his supposed grandfather. The actor in the portrait was someone named Frederick Sullivan. There has to be a story here, but who knows what it is. They use another portrait of the same gentleman in the Laurel Hardy murder case, but this actor, who was English, never performed in any Roach film that I can think of. He does appear as an actor in the Marx Brothers Duck Soup, which was directed by Leo McCarey. So is McCarey the explanation and the connection? I don't know. You can also see Mr. Sullivan in action in the W.C. Fields classic, You're Telling Me. Okay, then we have Mr. and the ill-tempered Mrs. Hardy, played by Lyle Teo. Did her parents want a boy because they gave her the same first name as that of ubiquitous character actor Lyle Talbot, pronounced and spelled the same, L-Y-L-E, Lyle. And she plays the father of the bride in the studio's curious, gender-bending 1925 two-reeler, What's the World Coming Through? All through the 1920s and 30s, she turns up in about 50 Hal Roach comedies, including as the first reluctant and unmarried customer for Christmas trees in Big Business, where Stan asks her, if you had a husband, would he buy one? Then in Red Noses with Thelma Todd and Zazu Pitts, you can hear Blanche Payson pronounce her name Lyle, rhymes with smile. Her name is not Lily. I don't know where that comes from, with some fans calling her Lily Teo. If you search online, Lyle is also a girl's name of French, Scottish, and English origin, meaning someone who lives on an island. 50, 60 years ago, when no one else seemed to care about such things, I identified all these minor character actors, names everyone takes for granted now, including Lyle Teo. I think it was Bob Davis from the Transportation Department who first said her name out loud for me in saying who she was. And in discussing these names with other Hal Roach Studios alumni, no one ever corrected me and said her name is Lily, because it's not. Again, screen Red Noses for the proof. Now, the credits we saw list George Stevens as cinematographer, but we're actually looking at the camera work of Hal Roach's older brother Jack, who shot the export negative while standing next to Stevens. All extant media versions of Their Purple Moment derive from the 35mm export or second camera neg, which had flash titles, and which was what we worked from 3+ decades ago, doing our restoration and preservation for the Eastern Hemisphere copyright proprietor, or Hal Roach Studios outside of North and South America. The nitrate was still pristine back then, so we were fortunate on this one. For what we are seeing here now, Serge Bromberg had a more difficult task, a little too complicated to go into. Suffice it to say, finding, getting, handling, lining up, and comparing the different physical elements, frame by frame, and then performing the digital cleanup and upgrade is meticulous, painstaking, and mind-numbing work. The pious little gossip marching around is played by Dorothea Walbert, whose credits at The Lot of Fun extend back to one-reelers starring Harold Lloyd. She was still working as late as the mid-1950s in an I Love Lucy episode. But back to print quality for a moment. All props to Serge and his team in Paris for their efforts. For our work 30-plus years ago, it was only physical film, photochemical restoration, but you can see what a difference the digital age has made. These films are mostly more beautiful looking than ever now. The supposed nightclub we are about to visit, called the Pink Pup, was right there on the back lot and turns up in many silent Hal Roach comedies. The exterior there was just a facade with the Pink Pup name and was located on the studio's New York street. Now maybe you know the significance of the name Pink Pup, but it's lost on me. I do recognize and have some of the stills we will see tacked up outside the Pink Pup as a tease. There they are. They were from pulchritude photo sessions at Hal Roach Studios to publicize some of the beautiful young ladies, and there really were, that the studio was hoping would become stars. Lotus Thompson, Anna May Wong, Olive Borden, Ina Gregory, Fay Wray, etc. The uniformed doorman standing outside in the background is Jack Hill. Later, inside, the same Jack Hill got a second payday as a diner, sitting alone at a table. We're not supposed to notice he has two roles. That's a good trick on us, right? Now, in case you wonder how a thing like that could happen, here's the answer. The dramatic feature King of Wild Horses was a big hit for Hal Roach Studios in 1924. The unsympathetic heavy was surprisingly enacted by Charlie Chase. I remember once I was driving back from duck hunting in Chino with Hal Roach, and I asked him, why would he cast a great comedy star in a role like that? Hal fired right back, quote, what the hell, he was working for me and he did what I told him to do. Anyway, all through the 1920s and 30s, there's the invisible Jack Hill, always doing nothing, simply taking up space in 37 Laurel and Hardy films. As fun, look for him. Tall, large ears, big nose, and few notice that he's simply everywhere. P.S. He was married 6 times and worked through the 1950s. The ladies that the philandering husbands meet are Kay DeLise and Anita Garvin, whom I was lucky to know really well. In going through my stills folder for their purple moment, on the backsides of several, I found the printed in ink capital letters A-N-I-T-A, Anita. In talking with Hal Roach Studios alumni through the years, I always tried to have still photos with me to show them in hopes the images would refresh their recollections and trigger memories I wanted to inquire about. Back then I had access to all the studio's 8x10 nitrate still negatives and could strike new prints, so when Anita expressed interest in having some that she liked, she would write her name on the backside so I would know which ones to print up for her. She was particularly enthused to see one taken at the table inside the Pink Pup nightclub where, as we will see in a moment, Kay DeLise is brandishing her little Saturday Night Special pistol and Anita is flashing her stiletto knife with great glee. And by the way, looking hot. As in attractive, that is, not warm, because I have some candid production stills showing director Parrott and others bundled up in heavy topcoats because it was cold in February there on that soundstage, which was not heated. So think of that as we watch these scenes. It's cold in there. I asked Anita why in the film are the two refined and lovely ladies eating twice in the story. They had just dined with those two deadbeats who ran out and stiffed them, and then there they are again with their new dates, Laurel and Hardy, right away feasting on huge steak dinners. And watch Anita, we'll see, she's really chowing down on that meal. She answered, quote, well, I don't write those scripts, you know, I just follow them. And they gave us real food, too, right out of the Argang Cafe, the studio commissary there. It was a free lunch, end quote. So now, right back there, Jack Hill is inside, out of uniform, sitting alone back there as a diner. We see you, Jack. What I've always told friends about Anita Garvin, it is rare when you get to know someone whom you've seen on the screen and they surpass your expectations for them. That almost never happens. But she was one of the few who did exceed your expectations. Meeting her, you would not have been disappointed. Being with her doing anything was actually better than seeing her in movies. That's the truth. It was almost like performing in one of her films, the way she'd effortlessly do takes and throw lines with perfect timing. But Anita Garvin was great, which Stan Laurel knew so well because all through the 1930s, he kept beseeching her to come back and make more movies. But she was focused instead on her family by then. Coming up, we've got the Midget Troupe performing the Little Floor Show. Later, they were supposed to have been involved in the picture's screwy climax, which was filmed but cut. Music for the Pink Pups Entertainment will be provided, but of course we can't hear them, this is a silent film, by the Irving's Band, likely contracted from Frank Sebastian's Cotton Club, the most important jazz establishment anywhere in Los Angeles at the time, located kitty corner right across the street and the railroad tracks from Hal Roach's office. In 2006, Chuck McCann and I inaugurated weekly luncheons with friends at the Culver City Hotel because of the connection to so many Hal Roach comedies shot there. The most popular story that circulated about the 1939 version of The Wizard of Oz was how the little people stayed there during production, having wild parties and a lot of sex at this hotel. I have a still photo in my Their Purple Moment file showing a huge gathering of midgets assembled at the hotel's front door outside the one we see in Charlie Chase's Limousine Love, beneath a sign that reads, "Largest number of little people ever assembled under one roof in America, 1928." End quote. Not 1938 for The Wizard of Oz, but 1928, the year Their Purple Moment was made. Were they there for this film? Or were there scenes written for them because the studio discovered they were all in town and right down the street? Now, we know Laurel and Hardy quite well from their sound films, so that even though this is a silent film, we can hear their voices in our minds, especially when we can also read their lips. Audiences in 1928 had to subconsciously supply the voices they imagined went with the personalities of the performers they saw. Would they have thought Laurel and Hardy spoke with their respective English and Southern accents? I wonder. The cigarette girl here is Fred Gill's sister, Clara, and he just helmed several 1927 L&H comedies, including The Second 100 Years. Off-screen, Mr. Roach was experiencing marital difficulties, while Mr. Laurel's wife, Lois, had just given birth to their daughter before Christmas and then had to go back into the hospital for a major operation. Mr. Hardy was then periodically also on the verge of divorce, being married to an alcoholic who was periodically in and out of sanitariums. Yet somehow, they all had to show up and create these great comedies. Watch here for a subtle maneuver by the future Oscar-winning director George Stevens, who later made so many classic feature films. Stan Laurel was partial towards this white pancake makeup, and he always wanted flat lighting, which provided a necessary sense of youth and innocence for his characterization. And in these several close-ups at the table, which we will be seeing, where he is paralyzed in dawning horror and has to register all the emotions associated with the disaster he is quietly awaiting of having no money to pay the bill. After big meals for everyone, Stevens throws this horizontal lighting right onto his face, just his face sort of focused on it. This was so-called key light as opposed to fill light. We're not supposed to notice it. And that's Stevens' artistry, though it's actually Jack Roach as the camera operator, because this isn't from the domestic camera neg. You have to look for it, but that's what Stevens does, right into Stan's face with that bright light. Try having a conversation with someone when there's a horizontal spotlight crashing right into your eyes. The steak dinner Mr. Hardy comments on, costing only $2.60, he says, well, as adjusted for price level changes, that's $46.10 today. Meanwhile, the ladies are somewhere gathering for the big showdown. And then we have the ever-snarling Leo Willis there looking for his cab fare. That house where the Laurels live and the Hardys stop by, this being the first domestic comedy for L&H in their world of perennially petty, greedy, domineering, shrewish, and vindictive wives, a precursor for what we'd see later on, variations of this material in better efforts like Blotto, We Fall Down, Below Zero, Sons of the Desert, etc., many more, as you know. And more of Stan, hitting all the emotions here, performing all the expressions one after another that let us know that he knows the boys are in big trouble about now. You can see this is a genius of mime at work, but that house where Mr. and Mrs. Laurel reside in such domestic bliss, in case you want to find it and visit this location someday. You get on Washington Boulevard in Culver City, running east from the ocean. Then it goes right by Thomas H. Ince's original Triangle lot, which became MGM and is now Sony. Then practically next door, you go by the second big Ince lot, which became DeMille, RKO, Pathé, Selznick, etc., now Amazon. Then right after that, you go by the site of Hal Roach Studios, where there is a Metroliner rail overpass today. Then you continue east a long ways, still on Washington Boulevard, until you get near to downtown LA, then go south a few blocks at Normandy and cross the Santa Monica Freeway, which wasn't there a century ago when their Purple Moment was made. And finally, you get to 1750 West 22nd Street between Normandy and Raymond Avenues. In still photos and in the film, you can see the house number, which is also on the curb, 1750. Not exactly a garden spot today. In 1992, the nearby intersection of Florence and Normandy was the flashpoint of the notorious Rodney King LA race riots. But that's the house, built in 1905, and that's the neighborhood. The house is still recognizable, but has a big fence around it today, probably a necessity, so pass out the pistols before stopping by. Chances are somebody at the studio lived there, which was usually the case for residential locations, but I never got around to researching that. Their Purple Moment was a season-ending production, and the last one branded as an all-star release. The team was fast ascending in importance. The script was over 4 8x14-inch legal-size single-space pages, and from February 15 through the 24th, it was faithfully adapted up until the planned but jettisoned bizarre masquerade ending, where L&H seek to escape the nightclub disguised as midgets, which was shot but did not play, though there are echoes of the deleted material in Our Gang's Fish Hooky 5 years later. So on March 7th, a Wednesday, they filmed a new ending. In 1981, I asked Hal Roach why. I had to refresh his recollection as to what picture and what sequence were under discussion because he didn't follow me at first. Once his films were successfully previewed, he paid little attention. Now, hold that thought. Hal Roach's answer to Charlie Chaplin's Eric Campbell and Buster Keaton's Joe Roberts was Tiny Sanford, who, looming large here, presents the dinner tab to Mr. Laurel for $28.10. Adjusted for inflation, that's $500 and change today. Of course, before the 20% tip, and don't forget about the sales tax. Back to Hal Roach. Once his films were successfully previewed, he paid little attention to most of them and for the rest of his life. So I read from the script and described in detail the alternate ending that was used instead. Neither impressed him, but I think he took my question as a challenge, which he often did. He said, quote, "By bringing this up, you suggest we made a mistake changing the windup. I say you are projecting your hopes into what you read into the script, just as we did. A lot of the time, that's what's written does not play. The routine with the midgets, escaping as midgets, did not pay off in the screening room or the preview, whatever it was. Otherwise, we would have kept it. The business with the pies may not have been great, but that always worked with audiences. We didn't have time for anything better. Run your print with an audience, then come back and tell me if we did the right thing changing it," end quote. Something else Hal said, but to the New York press in 1928 was, quote, "We brought Laurel and Hardy out slowly last year, but this year we are giving them plenty of rope. Their Purple Moment is a scream. The way it rocked New York audiences at the Capitol Theater a week ago was a revelation to me. You've probably seen it by now and know what it is," end quote. We know he was telling the truth because in their confirming review, based on the same playdates at that theater, the New York Daily Mirror stated, quote, "Their Purple Moment at the Capitol Theater is not the feature, but it is a classic of the slapstick school. Actual howls go up all over the house, provoked by the antics and misfortune of Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy as a pair of escaped husbands. The two comedians are marvelous, plump Mr. Hardy and his arch little smile, lean Mr. Laurel and his embarrassing inclination to burst into tears. Their Purple Moment is superlative slapstick. The gags are unforced and logical. The two stars are master comedians," end quote. Yes, they are. Actual howls, the guy wrote. So even lesser L&H rates rave reviews, then, now, and forever. provided we can keep the films alive, preserve them, and get them in front of current and future generations to come to see and discover and love the way we do, right? So please share this Blu-ray with your friends. Two more things. Over the years, beginning in the 1960s, when fans could start seeing Laurel and Hardy films again on some media, well, on most media where this film can be viewed, there is a key text title card missing near the end, the one where Hardy tries to blame Laurel for dragging him, quote, into this den of vice. Without that, you have no motivation for Laurel turning on Hardy the way he does. As mentioned, the export camera rig, from which all prints and videos derived today, had flash titles, and by the 1960s, this one had deteriorated. The inner titles were always printed on less stable, cheaper stock and tended to decompose sooner. But without that H.M. Walker text title card, we have a gap in the continuity. Finally, mea culpa, here's where I screwed up. My turn to be wrong, and I can only plead as an excuse that I did this more than 50 years ago when I was young, erroneous, and made all kinds of mistakes. Now I'm old, hopefully less erroneous, and make fewer mistakes. But in the early 1970s, I had never seen a Jimmy Aubrey comedy, or make that alleged comedy. And actually, no one should see a Jimmy Aubrey comedy because Jimmy Aubrey, any time, in any film, was neither funny nor likable, on screen or off by all accounts. But in the filmography I did, first for Leonard Maltin's Laurel and Hardy book, and then the one I did with Jack McCabe and Al Kilgore for our big picture book, I have Mr. Aubrey essaying the role of the kitchen chef here in this film. Wrong. It was Jack Lloyd, whom made films with Babe Hardy and the very same Jimmy Aubrey as the star, no less, at Vitagraph, and whom you see also, Jack Lloyd that is, in The Lucky Dog in 1921 and Saps at Sea, 1940. So few know about Mr. Lloyd, but he spans practically the entire history of Laurel and Hardy. But I'd seen Jimmy Aubrey get soup dumped on him in That's My Wife, and I thought, but incorrectly, that's the same man. Well, I'm glad that's all cleared up now. So until next time, I'm Richard Band saying this has been Their Purple Moment. Hope you enjoyed our few moments here with the two true monarchs of merriment, Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy.